Once again, my customers may ask for me by name. Gigolo Joe, what do you know?
There was some evidence from Lee's AI archives about Gigolo Joe, but not a lot of substance. And I was like an archaeologist going through every piece of paper to find out Stan in 10, what was the story he wanted to tell, because my job was to honor his story without forgetting about myself. I wanted to also be able to include my own sensibilities. But Gigolo Joe was an invention of Stanley's, but he never really fleshed him out, so to speak, or mech'd him out. So I had to invent a lot of Gigolo Joe's character, and one of the things I wanted him to be was a dancer.
I just take his hand.
Like he's a throwback to those old gigolos from the 1930s, you know, with tails, tuxedo and tails. He had everything but a cane and a top hat. I just envisioned him being elegant. And that was one of the things that attracted Jude Law, I think, to the part.
You deserved much better in your life. You deserve me.
I first heard about AI actually just after the time that Stanley Kubrick's death was announced. And like many people, I was a huge Kubrick fan. I heard about this project that he had apparently been working on. I'd heard of the involvement of Steven Spielberg in that project. And I'm taking those in, and then it's like... But it kind of came into my life when I was in Berlin working and coming to the end of a shoot there, and I just got a phone call one evening. It was my agent who said, look, there's a very, very important phone call you've got to take. Steven Spielberg wants to speak to you about his new project. He's just decided what he's going to do. Phone goes, I speak to Steven. He explained to me that he had just finished writing the screenplay for AI, that there was a part in it he wanted me to play. I flew to London that weekend to meet with him, and I sat with him and read through it. And I jumped on board very eagerly.
Yes, that's better. That's much better. Much better. Rather than that.
Oh, sorry.
I think the joy of playing a mecha was that every day, for me as an actor, was a discovery. It was almost like I was inventing. I came to this point several times through the rehearsal process and then through the shooting process, which was, you know, the obvious question, how do you play a robot? What do you think about? How can you possibly set up a list of rules to live by or to act by? Well, in a way, every day and every moment created a new question. Okay, how does my robot, how does my mechanical apply itself to this question or to this problem?
Do you want me to swirl before we leave?
I don't think so. I wouldn't swirl David here.
So I worked very closely for 3 months prior to starting filming with a British choreographer called Francesca Jane. The initial idea was Fred Astaire, just because of his grace. So I worked quite closely with her initially on very kind of classical ballroom type dancing and movement. And that moved very quickly on to movement that was slightly more influenced by Gene Kelly. But having said that, we also came up constantly with ideas that Joe should, if he could dance in one style, why can't he dance in another? And that was affected in sorts by the makeup, which started months and months before we started shooting. I think maybe at least 4 or 5 months before we started shooting, and was a long process involving Stan Winston, Steven and V. Neil. And initially I think the idea was to create a fake me with prosthetic molds that were applied covering my whole head with a wig that looked like my hair, but started to limit to a degree what I could do with my face. So they kind of opted for the alternative, which was rather than make a false me, it was to make me false. So V and Stan brilliantly came up with this makeup that would enable me to use my face naturally, but equally took away the kind of human kind of qualities of my looks. During that process, we flirted with the idea that Joe should be able to adapt his looks and his movement to attract any type of person that he chose.
They hate us, you know. The humans, they'll stop at nothing.
It was just a joy also to play someone who had, whilst he had such a huge journey, also had a very simple journey. It was a very pure journey. It was a journey of really recognizing trust. and really recognizing that a friendship is more important than a function. You know, Joe's function is to fulfill his Chip's needs. It's to keep going out and entertaining customers. But when it comes down to it, he chooses David over that. And that's why you must stay here with me. And that, for a robot, is a huge leap. Talk about a giant step for robot kind. It's actually breaking the function that you have been inbuilt. And it's almost as great as, you know, a slave suddenly realizing that he shouldn't be smashing rocks with his hammer, he should be smashing his manacles. It's like, it's a really powerful step.
And the shot after this is, as they bring you out, I'm going to get a shot over here like this.
I was just pleased to be a part of this gift that Stephen is so good at offering his audiences and serving the part of Joe, really.
Okay, great.
End of Gigolo Joe.
End of Gigolo Joe. That's the end.
Or is it?